Okay, hello and welcome to another video on our climb towards 2000 ELO. We are now at 705. Our opponent has played d4. I like to play f5, which is the Dutch. Normally, against the Dutch, you don't want to situate a knight on c3 because you would like to play either c3 or c4 yourself in future with your c-pawn, so this knight kind of gets in the way. But it's not a game-ending move, you know, it's not a dreadful blunder, it's just a slight inaccuracy. So the way to continue here with black is just to simply put a knight on f6. We're going to look to play e6, bishop e7, sometimes the bishop will come to b4 and we will castle. So let's go ahead and do this. Sometimes I would delay playing the move e6 if my opponent hasn't played d4, because of course you can get the Dutch after the English opening, which starts with 1 c4, after which f5 leads into the Anglo-Dutch defense. And if your opponent doesn't later play d4, then sometimes it's useful to play d6 before e6 so that you can play e5 in one move if they haven't got a pawn to capture. Because of course we're soon to play d6 in order to facilitate pushing e5, and that's taken 2 moves. So if we can get it in one, we should certainly be trying to do that. Okay, e3. Again, slightly unusual. It's going to be interesting to see where my opponent places this bishop. If they come to d3, we will fianchetto our own bishop. If they decide to fianchetto their bishop, then this bishop will stay where it is for the time being. I'm just going to develop to e7. I see another subscriber has come in. Wonderful news. Okay. So bishop d3, we will do this, and all will be well, but first I would like to castle. And now we can put our bishop on the long diagonal. Okay, so this rook e1 move indicates to me my opponent is looking to push e4. 1, 2, 3 attackers. The rook sees it, the bishop sees it, the knight sees it. I only have 1, 2. So let's put another attacker here, and we should be okay if we see e4. Oftentimes, in the Dutch, white is looking to push e4 before we can push either f4 or e5. My opponent here might be a little bit quicker in getting e4 in, but I don't think it would be a problem. e4 takes, and they just have a rook on e4. And I think I'm okay there because their queen isn't well positioned to take advantage of that early break. I think I'm going to play queen to e8. Now this is an unusual move, but it's quite thematic in the Dutch, because we want to rotate the queen over here, place a knight on g4, and go after this tender square. Okay, so this is a bad move from my opponent. Why? The queen was defending the knight here. If I capture this knight, yes, I'm giving up one of my best pieces, but you have to recapture with the pawn here. And now this is going to be an open file that I can make good use of. So how am I going to make good use of this? Well, queen check, king steps over. That kind of helps you out a little bit, actually, because now that you've got this, you probably want to step the king over and bring the rook to the open file. So I think slightly more dangerous is queen to h5, targeting this weak pawn. Now we might see either queen or bishop to e2 so that they can push this with an attack on the queen, but I'm not worried about that for now. We can always scoot the queen up. Alright, closing off lines here, very useful, because I was going to play bishop d6 to eye up this h2 pawn. However, this does induce a weakness in my opponent's position. What is that weakness? Well, this square becomes very weak, of course, and how do you defend it? You can't, really. So you're going to push it? Well, I'll be capturing it. So this already looks pretty dire for my opponent. Yeah, okay, bishop here. So the game is over. We take here with check, the king must step over here, and now queen f2 is checkmate. So the Dutch can be very, very, very deadly if you don't defend well as white. And we're going to have a look in the analysis in just a moment where my opponent went wrong. Good game. That brings us to 724 ELO. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the analysis. d4, f5 is the Dutch defense. Now this is a slightly unusual move because, as I say, you want to maintain some flexibility with this c-pawn. This is a kind of system-based setup that you can get as white in the Dutch. Let me just show you. c4, they play something like knight f6, play here, 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 here. The bishop can come out and attack the knight at some point, but you know, this is kind of standard stuff at this point. You play here. Now the knight comes out behind the c-pawn, and now we're in the main line. You can play this setup against the Dutch in almost all cases. Just leaving the bishop here. You don't have to come out for any early pins, although there are some lines like that. This is not the only way to play against the Dutch. There are many ways to do it. But if you're white and you come up against f5, if you arrange your pieces like this, you're more or less going to have a good game. Unless, of course, black isn't playing the moves that I've just played. They might throw some surprises at you, in which case you need to be prepared for some kind of strange early attack. But if we're just playing normal developing moves, then d4, c4, knight c3, knight f3, g3, bishop g2, and castles, and you're absolutely fine. But the way my opponent continued in the game was to play e3 and bring their bishop to d3. This does allow black to take the long diagonal here with a fianchettoed bishop on b7. Now at this point, e4 absolutely would have been the best move, and after all these trades the center starts to open up and white has a slight edge. White does have a slight edge in most of the Dutch main lines. The Dutch is considered to be slightly dubious at Grandmaster level or Super Grandmaster level, but it is still played. And I like it because it's very uncommon, which means I'm normally much more prepared for the types of positions that I get than my opponent is. However, here my opponent played the rather unusual move, b3. What are they trying to do here? Maybe fianchetto their bishop the way we've fianchettoed ours? Well, what's the difference? My bishop sees this lovely long light squared diagonal. My opponent's bishop would be staring at its own knight, and even with a knight to move out the way, it would then be staring at its own pawn chain, so it has far less scope than my bishop on the light squared diagonal. So this is a bit of a silly move. After queen e8, I'm about to get an attack rolling, and of course, a fatal error to move the queen from the knight's defense. And after you allow me to rip open your g-file, this all just starts to look pretty deadly. And this is a game-ending move, because now I have check, and the only escape square is king f1, after which queen takes on f2, held in place by the knight on g4. This is simply checkmate. Okay, I hope to see you in the next video, which will be coming out tomorrow, so stay tuned. Let me know in the comments how you tackle d4 when you have the black pieces, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Take care.